What is the most outrageous coincidence you've ever experienced? This coincidence is straight up sorcery. Was kayaking with my family along a river, when I thought I would pull a fast one on my brother. So I yell, "Hey, look, a bald eagle," to my brother so I can do the whole made you look game. But to my surprise he goes cool. At this point I think he is just messing with me, so I can't say the whole made you look thing. So then I look up and a bald eagle swoops down, catches a fish, and flies to the other side of the river. One of the most magical coincidences ever. One day I happened to meet an old friend in another country, even though we hadn't spoken in years and neither of us knew the other would be there too. I lived exactly a mile away from my now husband throughout our entire childhoods, teenager years, and early adulthood before we had even heard of each other and met. What's even stranger is, when he was running, head-no head ran 1 mile exactly when he got outside my house and would regularly stop and time himself. I'm from Quebec, where our French has a very distinctive accent. It's very rare to hear it outside of the province, and my ears are super sensitive to it and pick it up quickly. I now work in Taiwan, and one day I hear someone behind me speak with the Quebecois accent, so I immediately turn around. Turned out to be someone I went to high school with. One time I parked, without even noticing, next to a car with the same license plate as me. I had a MA plate, she had a NH plate, both with the same 5-digit number. The weirder thing was that both of us had kept the plate as a novelty plate because the state wasn't making 5-digit plate numbers anymore. But a family member wanted to keep it in my case. My dad wanted to keep his dad's plate. A woman in my hometown won the lottery, which was around 200 pp or 300 pp. 2 years later she won 5 million. She made a good investment, I guess. I ran into my niece who lives in Mexico City at the immense state fair on a day with 180k people. I met my wife 10 years after HS graduation. Turns out, she sat directly behind me in homeroom. We have been together for 30 years. The very first time I took my motorcycle out for a ride I popped into a coffee bean. The lady in front of me in line kinda looked familiar, then I realized it was Katie Segal. Then I realized that standing right next to me was Kurt Sutter, the creator-writer of Sons of Anarchy. Totally bizarre coincidence. I chatted with Kurt Sutter while we waited for our drinks. Super cool guy. Very down to earth. Then we went our separate ways. I figured he must live nearby, considering my neighborhood it wouldn't be a surprise. But after living here for about a decade I've never seen him since. Haha, completely random moment. Saw my brother in a porno. About 15 years ago my family was driving at night back from a vacation or something not important. We were on this winding farm road through trees at about 11 p.m. It was dark, warm and foggy. My dad thought it would be funny to scare my little sister. I making up some vague story about how the conditions reminded him of a story about a man who used to walk roads just like those with a red fireman's axe. He said the man would flag down cars and kill the families. Not 30 seconds later, we rounded a bend in the road, and walking on the center line of the road was a heavy fella carrying a red fishing pole bag long red tube. He threw his hand in the air to flag us down as my sister screamed and we drove off. There's always something weird happening when me and my best friend are together. Some recent examples that come to mind. We were at a coffee shop and said the exact same thing at the same time. We were talking about Mt. Vesuvius, and during that conversation we walked past a sticker on a stop sign saying Vesuvius. I have a strange dream, say nothing, and the next morning they tell me they dreamt about the same thing. We were at a restaurant talking about dreaming about a blackout. A few minutes later, the power went out. There have even been beats of silence followed by both of us saying at almost the same time something about a shared brain cell. The first two were on the same day. This is always happening. Running into a teacher 500 miles away. Called up a friend of mine landline, and there was a brief instant where the connection was established, but before his phone started ringing, he happened to pick up his phone in moment and proceeded to dial my number. Went out drinking with a friend of mine. I've gone out to bars maybe 3-4 times in my life. Next thing I know my sister walks into the bar. She lived across the country. Turns out she had just flown in. She planned on surprising our dad in the morning. My brother and I were riding our motorcycles from our AF base KI Sawyer, Michigan to Califon leave. We thought Wyoming was a no-helmet state and got pulled over by a cop who served his tour at Sawyer AF base. He didn't give us a ticket. Crazy. While on a motorcycling trip this August, I met a motorcyclist from my New England town at a viewpoint on the Northern California coast. It's not a huge town and I was only stopped for a minute. Maybe 8 years ago backpacking with a buddy on El Real, which is the US's least visited national park. You can only get there via ferry or seaplane. After setting up camp the first night we went swimming off the pier by the campsite, and I heard someone say my name. I instinctively turned around and saw my cousin there staring at me. He lives in another state, and I only ever saw him once or twice a year and had no idea he was even into backpacking camping. It's just the most bonkers coincidence. Isle Royale is a big place. Even if I knew for sure he was on the island at the same time I was, the odds of casually running into him would have been vanishingly small. The most ridiculous coincidence I have ever encountered was encountering my childhood tormentor at the supermarket as we were both purchasing toilet paper. What a ridiculous coincidence. I organize orgies and sex parties, so I seen some pretty interesting stuff. Back in about 2008, I went to a friend of a friend's house. I didn't realize, but she was having a swingers party. Unbeknown to her, she also had invited my parents. When I arrived, I saw Mom in the hot tub and Dad cooking at the grill with no pants on. I left very quickly,